In government has been perceived as the party of spend, 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 record borrowing and huge debts. How do you make sure that that doesn't happen in the future?
Diane Abbott.
The issue isn't spend, spend, spend. The issue is investment. And the danger of what...
Well, that's got to be paid for too.
Yes, but the point about investment is that that is spending which will, in the medium term, bring you the growth, which is the only way we get out of recession. There's a difference between idle spending and actually investing in the future. And the danger is that we have a competitive deflation in Europe, which is a race to the bottom.
Let me ask you a very simple question. Do you think the rich should be taxed more?
Well, I certainly think before we cut people's jobs and cut people's public services, we should look at things like a wealth tax.
So
we should look at a higher bank.
Should be taxed more. Now, David Miliband, what do you think? You were part of the government board.
I think it's very important to address your question, though, because a game is being played. And the game that's being played is to say that government caused this crisis. It was a market failure, not a government failure.
Well, you caused the structural deficit.
Second and critical point about this game that the Tories are playing was people's lives are on the line here, Jeremy. The second game that the Tories are playing is to say that they're only going to cut waste. That's what they said until election day. Now there are people dependent on the Future Jobs Fund, people who are expecting to go into university, people expecting to have child trust funds established them. What we're doing is not cutting, what the Tories are doing is not cutting waste. They're wasting people's lives. And I think it's our responsibility to be the party of growth. We've got to be the party that generates employment and growth.
Everyone can say that.
No,
the question is, we are where we are. Do you believe in cuts or not, or do you believe in raising taxes?
We've said very, very clearly that both we must reduce spending and we must raise taxes in a fair way, but we've got to have growth. Unless you have growth in your economy, you can try to cut the deficit till you're blue in the face, but actually you're never going to achieve it, because unemployment will go up, tax revenues will go down, and that is the great risk that the Tories are running.
Rate of income tax for the higher level payers stay and be permanent?
It should be permanent.
You think it should be permanent? What do you think, David?
I think it should certainly stay for this Parliament. I think that's a sensible
what do you think,
approach. But I want to say something else, because...
No, hang on, let your brother have a go. Go on.
I think, Roger, there are three things that we need to do on this. First of all, employment and growth is the key, and the short-term cuts that the Conservatives are going to make will actually damage our industrial future, because it's getting people into work that gets you the tax revenues and reduces the cost of benefits. Secondly, I think they're going to get the balance between tax rises and spending cuts wrong, because they're saying they want to cut taxes now, which will make the deficit worse. And finally, we do have to acknowledge that we have to make difficult decisions on spending as well, and that will be part of what we have to do. But we will do it in a way that is fair, whereas we already see the fact that they're going to do it in a way that is unfair, and they're even saying it's going to hit the poorest people in the society. And absolutely, I would keep the 50...
We're not talking about we're not talking about what the government's going to do. We're talking about who should be leader of your party.
I would keep the 50p tax rate permanently.
Permanently the 50p.
Yes, but it's not just about reducing the deficit. It is about fairness in our society, and that's why I would keep the 50p tax rate, not just for a parliament.
Does that work?
For the medium term, I would keep the 50p tax rate. But can I challenge the premise of your question? Because you just suggested we just throw money at services. If you take the NHS, we have brought spending on the NHS up to the EU average, so we now have a decent health service because we've caught up. So it wasn't the case that we were just throwing money at public services. This money got Britain back up to the level that the rest of Europe was funding their health service at. So it's really important to say that. In the coming period, we must be very vigilant that we don't see the NHS slipping back already.
Are you also saying you could have carried on borrowing and spending in the way that you were?
No one's saying that, Jeremy.
I'm asking.
None of us are
you
saying
can
that.
speak for himself.
We all stood on a platform which said it was imperative to halve the deficit over the course of the Parliament in the space of 4 years. That was a responsible and the right thing to do. No one on this panel is saying spend, spend, spend. What we're all saying is that there's a fundamental difference between us and a government which is threatening the roots of growth and is threatening cuts that are deeply unfair.
Yeah, but
if you're all saying the same thing, let's try and explore what
it's worse than that, because if they cut spending this year and rack up VAT, which they're going to do, I think, it's not only deeply unfair, it will actually set back the recovery, and the likelihood is we'll have unemployment rising, not falling.
Do you think you should have ruled out an increase in VAT when you went into the election?
Look, I accepted collective responsibility, and I stuck to the line, but...
We take it from that you do.
Yes, I did think we should have ruled out VAT, because the fact was, as David said, we had a deficit reduction plan, which got the deficit down, raised national insurance, controlled spending, but didn't involve a rise in VAT. David Cameron was always planning this rise in VAT. We should have said, this hits the poor, the unemployed, the pensioner. It's the wrong thing to do. Labour will not raise VAT.
Alistair Darling made a hash of that, anyway.
Well, look, it was,
Jeremy, can I make a point about this debate?
Let him answer the question. Did Alistair Darling make a mess of that?
Look, it wasn't only Alistair.
There were others who made these decisions, and it was a collective decision.
Who else?
Well, look, the Prime Minister and the Chancellor.
And collective responsibility, you as well, presumably.
There's a really
Jeremy, can I make a point?
There's a really important
Can I make a point here?
Hang on a second.
Well, no, it's not. Well, answer the question. Come on.
In the end, the Cabinet accepted and stuck to the budget strategy, and we did stick to that, and I defended it on Question Time in the election campaign. In retrospect, I'm
think
saying
you'd
now,
have been a
as
better
I said,
Chancellor, do you?
in retrospect, as I said at the time, we should have ruled out VAT because VAT is
been a
unfair.
worse Chancellor?
Look, the Chancellor was Alistair Darling, and I never wanted to be Chancellor.
Jeremy, can I make a point here, which is very important for the future of our party, which is that we need to talk about the future, not the past. If we spend our time in this leadership campaign talking about who said what to whom in the Cabinet 6 months ago, we're never going to win people back to our cause. And I think it's very important in this debate that we look forward, because we're talking about an election in a few years' time, probably.
So let's oppose the rise in VAT.
Absolutely.
Can I just say that although we might agree on some things, I think we perhaps differ on what we would cut. I would save £4 billion by cutting Trident. I would save a further £5.6 billion by having a staged withdrawal from Afghanistan and cutting defence spending. On this, I differ with my colleagues.
Can I ask another question now? Because this is an email question we've had. It's about Iraq, and I will make it kinder to you, because the